Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining us here once again on Instagram for another Wine Wednesday. Hey, I'm Christian LaRoche, sales manager for Waldorf Wine Group, and I'm so glad you could join us here. Wine Wednesday, as the name implies, this is something we've been doing every Wednesday now since May of 2020. Yeah, we pivoted online way back when at the start of the pandemic and decided to bring some online content for all things Waldorf Wine Group. For those of you not familiar with this, Waldorf Wine Group, we're a small family-owned wine importing company founded back in 1993 by Andy Waldorf, still in the same hands. We bring in European wines into British Columbia and into Alberta. And we've got a really eclectic portfolio. We run the gamut from small family-owned estates, co-op cellars, class growth Bordeaux, and the like. And it's a great way to keep up to date with us here. As mentioned, we've got an eclectic portfolio of something for everyone, great wines at all price points. And boy, we've got such a cool wine tonight for you. One of my absolute favorites that we are so proud to be able to bring these wines into British Columbia and Alberta. It's a long story. You may have heard it before. I've talked about it, but I am just so chuffed. Getting back to Waldorf Wine Group and Waldorf Wine Wednesday, what it is, it's a clearinghouse of all things Waldorf Wine Group. We look at wines that we bring into the market. We look at samples that we're thinking of bringing in. We talk about promos we might be having or any visits we might be having from winery principals and the like, and just anything that's going on. So I do invite you, if you haven't done so already, please do follow us on Instagram. We'd love to have you join us here. We're at about 562 followers and growing. And so, yeah, we'd love to have you join us here each Wednesday. We've got a couple of regulars here. I see some good friends here. David Lancelot. I see you, Pamela Cohen. That's great. I'm glad you could join us. We are trying today. We get an allocation once a year from one of our absolute iconic producers from Spain. This is probably the ultimate example of traditional winemaking in Spain, maybe in the world. Actually, these guys are very, very hardcore, extreme, but they do it just because that's the way they like to do it. They don't make any show about it. It's just their way, and they've always done things that way. That's the way they like it, and that's the way they're going to keep it. Thank you very much. I'm going to flip the camera around. One of my absolute favorite suppliers. Gosh, I'm so chuffed to be able to bring these wines in and to show them to people and hook people up with them, because these are real. They're real pieces of history, but what's old is new again. And we just absolutely love these wines. I'm going to flip the camera, show what we're trying. We are in Spain, in Rioja. Yeah, we're back with our Lopez de Heredia, Vina Tondonia. This is a collection of 4 different single vineyard wines. It's an old family estate founded by Don Rafael Lopez de Heredia y Landeta back in 1877, even says so on the label, fundada in 1877. And he was born of Basque parents, actually in Chile. And moved back to Spain and got involved with the war there, ended up on the wrong side and had to flee the country afterwards. And he ended up going to France, to southwest France, and getting involved with the wine trade in Bayonne, and was working there. And then phylloxera hit a lot of Europe, and they were looking for other sources of wine. So they looked towards just south of Bilbao, about 75, 80 kilometers, in the town of Haro, and set up shop there. And Don Rafael founded the winery, as mentioned, back in 1877, and started gathering vineyards, and he bought some vineyards off of the clergy. The most famous vineyard there is the one that actually is incorporated into the name of the winery. It's our Lopez de Heredia, but Vina Tondonia. Tondonia is the vineyard. Tondonia is actually another wine unto itself. It's this wine, which we'll do in a couple of weeks. We got the new vintage of this in as well, too. But that's another story. Now, notice this wine. This wine, the Tondonia, which is the bigger vineyard at about 115 hectares, which they bought back in around 1913 from the clergy. You notice this is more of the traditional Bordelais bottle, whereas the wine that we're trying today, it's a much smaller vineyard. This is the Bosconia vineyard. And you notice, too, there are also different bottle shapes, and that gives you a clue as to the style of the wine. The Tondonia is a little bit more, I would have to say, austere, maybe a little bit more Bordeaux in style, a little bit more upright, whereas the Bosconia, you noticed it comes in the burgundy shaped bottle. It tends to be a little bit more fruit forward. In fact, actually, the wine in the past used to actually have an amount of Pinot Noir in it, way back when. Of course, it doesn't anymore. Not allowed to. But it gives you an indicator of the style of the wine somewhat. But these wines, in a way, they are a little bit... Yes, they are different in terms of style. Extreme close-up. But also, keep in mind, these wines are what we call... these wines are probably the extreme example of the house style. Now, the house style at Lopez de Heredia is these are long-aged wines. If you look at it, this is the new vintage. It just got released and just came in. It's 2013. It's a 12-year-old wine, 11-and-a-half-year-old wine. And this is the new vintage, just got released. So that gives you an idea of what Lopez de Heredia is about. They late release their wines. They hang on to them for a long time, and they treat all their wines the same way, be it red, white, or even rosé. Long barrel aging, but in neutral barrels, old American oak. And that's the style of wines that they like. Now, because of that, too, long barrel aging, but the other thing, too, is these barrels are somewhat porous as well, too. So they allow oxygen to permeate the wine as it's aging in barrels. So these wines are what we call an extreme example of oxidative winemaking, winemaking in the presence of oxygen. So what ends up happening is, in the case of the red wines tend to get a little bit more developed, and they kind of lose color. They get a little bit lighter. They take on more of those bricky colors. You get more of those developed fruits. So mature, dried out fruit, forest floor, a little bit more of the oaky characteristics. The white wines, they actually darken. They take on deep golden colors. They look a little bit like apple juice or chicken stock or maple syrup. And they take on a little bit of almost like a sherry note to them as well, too. These are fabulous wines, but they can be a little bit divisive. I always say with Lopez de Heredia, you either love the wines or you hate them. A lot of people are not on the fence about these wines because I think they will challenge a lot of people. They may not be used to it. We used to sell these wines at the BC liquor stores for many years. And these wines all across the range. There's 4 single vineyard wines. Tondonia, the wine that we're trying today, Bosconia. This is the smallest of the 4 vineyards at 15 hectares. Vina Gravonia, the white wine, and Cubillo as well. The interesting thing about these wines, as mentioned, all single vineyard wines, but long aging. So if you are selling this to people who have cut their teeth on, say, what we like to call fruit bombs, big high octane, big fruit, high alcohol wines, say from wherever, Australia, California, maybe Argentinian Malbec, what have you, in your face, big bright fruit, gobs of fruit. These wines might come as somewhat of a shock because the fruit is more developed, dried out, the oak. They're leaner, drier, earthier wines with lots of tertiary characters and secondary flavors going on. And they're super interesting. These would definitely appeal to people who would normally drink, old Bordeaux or older Italian wines or Burgundies, and, a Euro palate for sure. And they're wonderful wines. So we get a small allocation once a year. Our allocation actually just arrived a couple of weeks ago, so we actually have a few cases left. So if you're interested in anything, please do drop me a line. You can either DM me here or just shoot me an email. It's Christian@waldorfwine.com, and that's Christian, Christian @waldorfwine.com. I'll hook you up. I'll tell you what's still available. We don't have an awful lot. We don't get very much to begin with. These wines move quite quickly. But as mentioned, 4 single vineyard wines, long barrel aging, and they supersede the aging requirements as set out by the Rioja Regional Authority. For example, this wine here, technically, this is a reserve wine, and in Rioja, there are certain aging requirements. A Crianza wine, the youngest wine in the hierarchy, is usually released, its second, at least in its second year after the harvest, having spent a year in barrel. A reserve wine has to be aged for at least 3 years, of which a year in barrel. A Grand Reserva wine has to be released after 5 years, of which it's spent at least 2 years in barrel. This wine, for example, that we're trying today, has spent 5 years in barrel, 5 years in bottle before they even released it. Even their Crianza wine that we bring in, the Cubillo wine, the current vintage is 2016. And even that spends 3 years in barrel and 3-4 years in bottle before they release it. So even the Crianza wine for Lopez de Heredia would qualify as a Grand Reserva for any other winery. It's crazy. I'll pull it up on the Google Earth map, but these wines, as mentioned, the family is very, very passionate in maintaining the winery the way they like it. They're in no hurry to release the wines. They do everything in-house. They have their own cooperage. They make all their own barrels and vats and harvesting tools and baskets, and everything is done in-house. And right now, talking about the oxidative winemaking, we're talking a little bit about the barrels. Now, Lopez de Heredia uses old American oak. American oak, wider grained, so it can actually be sawn into the staves, whereas French oak is a much tighter grain. It has to be seasoned outside and dried, and it has to be split. American oak, when it's young, it can impart kind of a creamy butterscotch texture in the mouth. If you've ever had any of those butterscotch toffee laden Chardonnays from California from time to time, that's diacetyl that plays a part in the mouth. You'll get that more either on a toasted barrel or in a younger barrel. But as the barrel is used, it loses that ability to impart the diacetyl, and it becomes more of a neutral aging vessel. And what that tends to do is, we talked about the oxygenation of the wine. What that tends to do is, it's the polymerization of tannins. And what it does is it lengthens the chains of tannins. So when you put the wine in your mouth, the tannins normally will interact with your saliva, and it'll give that mouth puckering astringency on the side. By having had that oxygenation going on in the barrel, it lengthens the chains of tannins, and it smooths the wine out, so you don't get that astringency, and you really taste it in these wines. They're interesting wines. I have to say, I find with the length of aging, it makes it a little bit more difficult to really drill down and find huge vintage variations. I find in the wine that we're trying today, however, this is interesting. I was really looking forward to trying this one because 2013 was a much cooler vintage with some rain in it. So I wanted to see how the wine showed, because normally Bosconia, it's never a full body wine. These wines are generally about 12.5, 13% alcohol. So that's kind of their calling card. Medium body, very full flavored, very, very long lived old vine wines. These wines, of course, the reds especially are based on Tempranillo. The whites are based on old vine Viura and a bit of Malvasia. They also do a rosé wine. For a long time, they were the only Gran Reserva rosé wine. They released their rosé wine when it's 10 years old. They didn't offer us any this time around. They're taking a break on it for a number of vintages to help build up inventories once again. But anyway, talking about 2013, cooler vintage with a little bit of rain, and I really tasted it in the wine this morning. These wines are interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the wine. Actually, before I talk about the wine itself, it's in the hands of the fourth generation now. We mentioned it was founded in 1877 by Don Rafael Lopez de Heredia y Landeta. It's now run by Maria Jose Lopez de Heredia and her sister Mercedes Lopez de Heredia, who's the winemaker, and their brother Julio Cesar, who looks after the viticulture. Very cool. As I say, they have their own cooperage. And get this, it's a testament. You can tell that this winery is run by a family. They're still in use right now. They have over 14,000 barrels and vats. Think of that. They are sitting. My running joke is, you can tell this winery is not owned by an insurance company or a bank, because how can you sit on that much wine? Think of how much cost that ties up. And they're sitting at any given point on 21 different vintages aging in there. It's crazy to think about how much wine. It's a Fort Knox of wine, but it's much more than that. In a way, it's a fully functioning, living winery. It's almost a bit like a museum. We'll pull up the shots and show you in a way, and I'm going to make a point about that too, because I think it's very important. Should be said. You know what? This might be a good time to pull it up. Why don't we pull up the Google Earth map? I've been talking about the wine, but I think we should talk about the winery a little bit more. Let's just get this bottle out of the shot here. So let's pull up the map here. Okay, so we are in north central Spain. Just going to get my mouse moving here. And just south of Bilbao, about 75, 80 kilometers. So we're in the town of Haro. I'm just going to pull it up here. Here I borrowed a Rioja map from Wine Folly. So there's three basic regions for the Rioja. Down in the southeast, this is it's a warmer region dominated more by Garnacha grapes. This is what used to be called the Rioja Baja, the lower Rioja, now called Rioja Oriental, just southeast of Logroño. And more Grenache-based wines, a little higher alcohol, more fruit-forward. Up here in the darker region, this is the Basque region north of the river Ebro. This is the long flowing Ebro River, goes across north central Spain and spills out in Catalonia, just southwest of Barcelona. This is the Rioja Alavesa, making super, super elegant wines. And then here to the west, this is Rioja Alta, culminating up here in the town of Haro. Let's pull the Google Earth map up again. Haro is a fascinating town, and if you ever get the chance, I highly recommend it. It's perched up on a little hilltop here over by the river, not far from the highway either. When I go, there's a converted monastery called Los Agostinos here in the center of town, and very, very, very cool place. to stay. Just north of the town itself, here is the section where a lot of wineries set up shop. This is the railway comes through here. This is called the Barrio de la Estación, the railway neighborhood, basically. And you've got a roll call of some really cool different wineries. It's a real juxtaposition of wineries. We've got Cune down here, Compañía Vinícola del Norte de España. Hey, we used to import those wines a number of years ago. Bodegas Bilbanas up here. And then on the east side of the street, Bodegas Muga. Another traditional winery here, Bodegas Gomez Cruzado. And then right next door, La Rioja Alta. And then up around the bend here is Rhoda. This is a very, very modern space age winery run by a Catalan couple. And then right next door is Lopez de Heredia. Yeah. And right next door to the train tracks. And like I say, it's a labyrinth of cellars that goes all the way out to the banks of the Ebro River. Just going to pull it up here. Here are their vineyards. Here's the winery, the bodegas down here. This is their biggest vineyard. This is the Tadonia vineyard that they bought off the clergy back in 1913. It's about 115 hectares. And they make red wine, white wine, and rosado. And it's the wine that gives its name to the winery. This is the Zacconia vineyard where they produce the Vina Gravonia white wine at about 24 hectares. Over here, just on the other side of the river to the west, is Cubillo. This is the 28-hectare vineyard, and this gives this produces what is their Crianza wine. But as I mentioned, for anybody else, it would qualify as a Grand Reserva. This is Bosconia up here, a little bit further north, and it's a 15-hectare vineyard, and they produce anywhere between, I think, 24 to 40,000 bottles a year of Reserva. They also make a Grand Reserva as well when the vintage is good enough. But this is, like I said, on the left bank of the Ebro River, 15 hectares. The soil here, it's alluvial clay, high proportion of limestone. It's about 465 meters above sea level. Average age of the vines is about 45 years old. It's all organically farmed, all natural fermentations. The wine's 80% Tempranillo, 15% Garnacho, and the remaining 5% is a little bit of Mazuelo and Graciano. And the wine's aged for 5 years in old American oak and 5 years in bottle before they even consider releasing it. Let me just flip over a little bit here. There's a shot of Maria Jose Lopez de Heredia. We've had her here a number of times visiting. Great raconteur. She'll tell you everything and anything about the winery. Very, very passionate. And here's a shot of the winery, Swiss Tower, the red tiles. Very historic winery. And this is where it gets really cool. Check this out. These are some of the galleries underneath. And if you look up above here, you see some of the penicillin mold that grows there. And it's super, super interesting, the environment there. I'm just going to scroll down. This is their tasting room. You can see how old, and it literally is like that. They do not move a cobweb for fear of changing anything in the environment there. But I'm just going to pull the this back out and get the bottle back into shot here. But my point being is, let's flip the camera around. I just want to make one quick point here. They high humidity. Keep a lot of the penicillin mold up there, but what that does is it maintains a constant humidity. They allow spiders to live in there because they don't want moths or anything burrowing into the corks, and it protects the wines. But the other thing too is we often talk about terroir in the vineyard and how weather conditions and cover crop and flora, fauna, wind and weather, and the elements and how that affects, how the grapes are grown and how that translates into the flavors of the wine, etc., and the characteristics of the wine. Well, think of how this wine is aged in that environment there. High humidity, cobwebs everywhere. To me, that's the living, breathing microbiome of the winery where the wine is aged in. So to me, that is every bit as important as a terroir element in the wine. I think that's one of the things that makes these wines so unique. It's interesting too because here's a wine that these are not. How should I put this? These are not inexpensive wines, but they are also not king's ransom wines like some of the collector Bordeaux's and Burgundies and Super Tuscans and Napa Cabs and the like and things like that. These wines are not inexpensive, but for what you were getting and the historical significance and the fact that this winery holds onto the wine for that length of time. Look, a lot of us, we either don't have the facilities to age wine that long, whether we're a customer or whether we're a restaurant. So to be able to get wines like this that are ready to drink when they come to market, it's like almost getting an automatic library release. So that's pretty cool as well. And something that I think is very, very, very rare. I'm running out of things to say. I think this is probably a great time to give the wine a try. Now, on another note, we talked about this before with Maria Jose Lopez de Heredia. We had her out here in British Columbia a number of years ago, and one of the things she said was Lopez de Heredia wines, because they are oxidized, she says, never decant my wines, red, white, or rosado. She says, Maria Jose says, the rapid introduction of oxygen decanter will knock her wines down and make them go dumb. So what she recommends is pour a little bit into your glass, taste it, sip it, and then just let it be. Follow it along, let the wine breathe, open up, and do that. And that's what I did with the bottle. When I had tried it first thing this morning, it was actually fairly sullen. It wasn't showing very, very much. It was a little bit leaner than I anticipated, and so it was nice to follow it throughout the day. That's just the thing. These wines are very, very, very long-lived. Old vines, low yields, but they just have a lot of staying power. This 2013 will easily last, if you wanted to, another 15, 20 years in a cool cellar. But check out the color. So this one's actually reasonably deep as far as a Lopez de Heredia wine goes. You've got a fairly deep ruby center. Not quite bricking, but we're veering towards sort of like slightly pinky mahogany or something like that on the meniscus. But already, holy cow, that's just jumping out of this glass. I'm using my branded, this is my Riedel Riesling Chianti glass, branded. We used to bring in a winery from Navarra a number of years ago. But yeah, wow. Very, very typical Tempranillo-based nose. I'm getting a lot of, actually, a fair bit of cedar on this wine. Wow. But very, very high tone. Don't forget, Bosconia is normally the more fruit-forward of the red wines, of the Reserva wines, that is, for Lopez de Heredia. Definitely picking up a little bit more dark cherry, a little bit leather, almost like a leather couch, and a bit of earthy, kind of woody spice. The other thing I pick up in Lopez de Heredia wines, and I've spoken about this before, I used to live in Spain a number of years ago. I had to go all the way there to meet my wife from Vancouver. I kid you not. When we were living there was a lot of construction going on, and we lived in the south. We lived in Sevilla, in Andalusia, and there was a lot of construction going on. And one of the construction elements was red bricks. Well, people would take their siesta and leave the bricks out in the hot Andalusian sun, and those bricks would get this hot, kind of baked medicinal character that reminded me a little bit of like iodine or mercurochrome. This has that in spades. The other thing, and I've mentioned this before too, is I used to work in my parents' garden, and we would put out bags of peat moss in there too. This really has that sort of high-toned, sort of peat mossy nose. It's fantastic. I love it how you're able to travel places in your wine glass like that. So let's give this wine a swirl and a sniffy sniff. Oh, wow. Super, super pungent. What I like about this too is it doesn't have that dill character that I find that a lot of other Rioja wines will have from time to time. Let's give it a sip and see what we're trying. Mmm. 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 Wow. Super pretty. That is really, it's interesting. I've had some earthy bottles of Bosconia. We did the 2010 not too long ago, and that was really earthy. This one is super, super pretty, seamless. It's almost got sort of a, I don't know how to put it, like a bit of a weightless character to it. Really fresh acidity, and it really fans out. It's really got that peacock's tail in the mid palate, but it's got also a little bit of almost like a little bit of like an incense thing going on as well too. I'm just gonna have another sip if I may. There's a lot going on in this one. Mm. 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 Yeah, cedar and plum, a little bit of smoke. It's almost got like a little bit of embers or something going on in that, but really silky, smooth tannins. Really enjoying that. You know what? This vintage, 2013, this would really, I think, really appeal to Pinot Noir drinkers. It really has a very, very supple texture. Really impressed with that. What would I do that with? Well, this is no heavyweight. I wouldn't throw a big steak at this, but I think this would be great. I just mentioned Pinot Noir. A duck breast. I think this would be fantastic with a duck breast, or maybe a roast goose with black olives. Lamb, of course. Maybe just some lamb chops with rosemary and garlic. Or even on its own. This is just so enjoyable. This is a real contemplation wine. Listen, we have a little bit left of this, and also the Tondonia as well. We've got a couple of cases left. Tondonia we have left in this 750 ml, a few cases. Got a couple of half bottle cases as well too, and we've got one case of Magnums. These wines are so cool in Magnum available. Bosconia, like I said, we're getting quite low. We've only got a couple of cases left of that, so if you want any, contact us now. Like I said, you blink and you're going to miss it. So yeah, as mentioned, these wines are really, really hard. We're all sold out of the white wines. Problem with the white wines is we get a tiny allocation. Literally, we get about 5-6 packs of any of the white wines. And, if we ever get a Grand Reserva, yeah, we'll get like maybe a case, and that's about it. So it's really hard. Pam, I see you asking about 375 ml bottles. The only one we have in is the Tondonia Reserva Red 2012 in 375 ml bottles. You got about, I think, 4 cases left of that. I'll shoot you some details a little later on. I saw your email come in. But yeah, these are, like I said, in the world of fine wine, these are one of the absolute gems, and very, very few. Nobody makes wine like this anymore. These are the ultimate traditional Rioja. This is the wine that gets Rioja traditionalists all weepy. I have a personal pride for this wine too, because I'm originally from Ottawa, and I was a member of the National Capital Sommelier Guild for many years, and we did a tasting at the National Gallery of Canada with Lopez de Heredia with wines going back to 1964. And I vowed that if I ever got in the wine business, I would make it my mission to represent Lopez de Heredia, and I'm so proud I was able to make that happen. Definitely a dream come true. So Yeah, just happy to have him. Hey, don't think we've got much more on the agenda for this week. Lots of wines still coming in. We're just catching up after Wine Fest. Spring is here, coming soon, I should say. Lots of stuff coming on stream, so we're starting to push our whites and rosés. Hopefully, the rosés will start arriving soon and things like that. And yeah, got to deal with those tariffs. That sucks. So if you're tired of American wines, check us out for some European wines as well when you're also not drinking Canadian wines. So yeah, think of us. What are we going to do next week? I don't know. We're going to reach back into the tickle trunk and see what else we've got. Maybe you'll do something German, maybe something Italian. Who knows? But come back and check it out. We'd love to have you join us. Hey, I'm Christian. Thank you so much for joining us on Wine Wednesday. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care. Bye for now.